Good morning, everybody. It's such a great pleasure for me, for us, to welcome you here to the 45th EAIR Forum at the University of Applied Sciences Upper Austria in Linz. I had the pleasure to meet some of you during yesterday's reception, so we already had the chance to chat a little bit, and I'm already looking very much forward to do the same over the next three days. As I said, a very warm welcome to all of you. We do not only have you as participants here in the auditorium, but we also have online participants. And it would be great to see those online participants as well. So maybe you could turn your cameras on. Great welcome also to those who are joining us online. So 3 people joining us online right now. In addition to Kuhn, who is here, he's the coordinator of EAIR, so you see his face twice. Good to see you. Great to have you here as well. My name is Silke Preymann. I am on the organizing committee of this year's forum, and I will do the moderation part together with a friend and a colleague of mine, with Professor Rosalind Pritchard from Ulster University. She also is secretary of EAIR. And Rosalind, somebody told me that it's actually a 24th forum, so I'm really looking forward to some spicy experience I'm sure you might have had during this long history of this forum. Because we want really to make this rather quick, I like to give the floor to this year's forum chair, Dr. Regina Aichinger. Dr. Regina Aichinger is the Executive Vice President of this institution and responsible for higher education research, quality management, sustainability management, teaching and learning, diversity management, and compliance issues. 12 years ago, and that's the reason also why we are here today, she founded the Department for Higher Education Research and Development at this institution. She has been researching in the field of higher education research for 15 years and has published quite some contributions in this field as well. Her research work focuses on higher education governance at an institutional level, but also at the system level, especially within the University of Applied Science sector in Austria. Regina is also the co-founder of the network Higher Education Austria, which was founded in 2017 here in Austria. Thank you, Regina. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind introduction. So, Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished executive committee members of the EAIR, dear colleagues in higher education research, a warm and cordial welcome at the University of Applied Sciences Upper Austria from my side. On behalf of the Executive Board and the Senate of our university, I have the great honor and pleasure to open the 45th Annual Forum for the Higher Education Society. We are really glad about the trust of the Executive Committee to act as host institution for this wonderful event. This year's conference theme, Shaping the World of Change, Higher Education as a Key Enabler, was chosen because we are convinced that higher education institutions have traditionally been important actors in shaping change and transformation. And after the worldwide dramatic developments because of wars, migration, diseases, economic and also climate changes, I'm convinced that it is important for higher education research to contribute to transformation and innovation via our observations, evaluations, analysis, and change suggestions. Through knowledge generation and innovation, we can offer many different solutions to contribute for managing change in economic, societal, and environmental terms. Higher education systems, institutions, as well as actors, thus assume a responsible role in managing and designing our world of change. And so I'm confident higher education research should strive to examine new opportunities and should challenge as well as provide potential for further development of the numerous services areas in higher education, but also for politics and society, worldwide and everywhere. With our 7 tracks, governance in volatile times, sustainability in higher education, transformations in teaching and learning, revisiting the student's role in higher education, quality, a stabilizing factor in the changing world, internationalization of higher education, and finally, designing innovative curricula, we try to create a solid basis for your contributions in order to discuss certain topics and issues of worldwide phenomena in higher education. So it's a great chance, and I may say a certain obligation for us researchers to consider new ways for further development. May it be with shading lens on a system, an institutional, or an actors level. Both the members of the organization committee and also the colleagues acting as track chairs were impressed by the high quality level of your contributions. Thankfully, we received around 130 very inspiring proposals. We are also proud to welcome about 190 participants coming from more than 30 different countries worldwide. Hence, we're absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to discuss your results and insights with you during the upcoming 3 conference days. I would like to take this opportunity to express my warmest thanks to my colleagues within our university, as well as to the colleagues who serve as co-track chairs and the EAIR for the good cooperation and the big efforts and work that has gone into the preparation of this conference. I would especially thank Silke Preymann, Barbara Eichgruber, and Theresa Pfanzelter for their tireless efforts. Me and my team at the University of Applied Sciences Upper Austria tried to organize an inspiring program for you and hope that you will enjoy both our culinary offerings and the numerous possibilities for getting to know each other, seeing some colleagues once again, and exchange thoughts, but especially have fun within an international community. I hope you will enjoy the dinner banquet tomorrow evening at the Monastery of St. Florian. We also organized the quintet of the famous Anton Bruckner Orchestra for some wonderful musical interludes. Well, and to the end of my speech, let me make a very personal remark. I remember my first attendance on the EAIR forum, I think about 14 or 15 years ago. I was really deeply impressed by the friendly, kind, and open atmosphere at the conference. I would conclude it is really some kind of a worldwide distributed research and scientific family. And was said yesterday evening, both of Rosalind and Bruno, many members of EAIR have become real good friends over time. Since then, me and my team have experienced so much support, interest, and commitment to be on the concrete reach work. May it be on the chance to act in a very vital international researchers network. And with a twinkle in my eyes, we are proud to be the ER internal Linz ladies. Yes, we tried hard to make this forum a success. I hope you enjoy Upper Austria, and we have succeeded in ensuring that the Linz forum will always be friendly remembered. So let's start in a wonderful time of exchange, and let's have fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. The Austrian Federal Minister for Education, Science and Research, Martin Polaschek, is not able to join us today, but he sent us his welcome words on video, so we'll show this video right now.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, further development, with all its challenges in the higher education sector, is an extremely important and, above all, seminal topic. I am all the more pleased that you are dedicating your time to this very topic in the context of this conference, which begins today. Shaping the world of change, higher education as a key enabler. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you warmly to the conference. It is particularly gratifying that this conference is taking place at the University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria. After all, the University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria is one of the most research-intensive universities of applied sciences in Austria. The university's focus is on the core area of the major social challenges of our time. It not only trains the skilled workers of tomorrow, it is also indispensable for regional development and the location, Upper Austria, as a knowledge hub and partner for research and development projects in business and society, especially in times of rapid technological progress, as well as changing global economies and societies. It is crucial for our universities to impart the necessary skills and competencies. Internationalization, digitization, practical orientation, interdisciplinarity, quality assurance and evaluation, and sustainability play key roles in this regard. This makes it all the more important to recognize and promote the role of higher education as a key enabler in shaping our future. Higher education is not only a place of learning and knowledge transfer, but also a place of creativity and interdisciplinary exchange. A place to acquire knowledge and at the same time invest in the future of our society, where research and development is crucial to drive innovation and gain new knowledge. Not to be neglected is the need to promote lifelong education. This ensures that skilled workers can continuously expand their skills and adapt to changing requirements. Finally, it only remains for me to wish you all an exciting and stimulating exchange and an interesting conference.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I know some people were not here yesterday when I first introduced our chair, Bruno Broucker. I'm Rosalind Pritchard, and I'm the secretary of the EAIR, and Bruno is the chair, has been since 2022. So Bruno is the head of education office and responsible for policy at the Institute for Tropical Medicine in Antwerp. And he's very proud of the fact that this university has done very distinguished research on Ebola and has discovered the roots of the virus and put it into the biobank. So that is a little detail that he's particularly proud of in his home institution. And he's also a visiting professor in the Katholische Universität of Leuven. So he said, that's quite enough to say about him. I asked him if he wanted me to add anything to what I'd said yesterday, but he's a modest man, fairly modest mostly. So I'll pass you over to Bruno now. Enjoy.
Thank you, Rosalind. Dear colleagues, dear community, dear EAIR newcomers, dear friends. It's my pleasure to be here again at our yearly forum in the beautiful city of Linz that I had the opportunity to visit yesterday a little bit, and I can recommend especially the old part of the city. For myself, it's the 10th time I will join the forum, so I still have at least 15 more forums to go if I want to beat Rosalind. And I've been wondering myself why I always want to come back. Of course, I look forward to the different sessions. I look forward to the presentations. I look forward to talk to so many of you and to feel the vibrant atmosphere this community has. But I think what makes EAIR special is the diversity of our audience, the eagerness to learn from one another, the willingness to engage. The willingness to engage with people that are online and that are on site, with researchers, policymakers, and practitioners who are all interested in higher education. Because I believe that we all share this fundamental idea that higher education can help to make society a better place. Higher education makes social mobility possible, stimulates innovation, builds bridges between social layers. Now, as Regina has already told, the last years have shown that the world is facing many complex and grand challenges. Climate crisis, migration crisis, energy crisis, economic crisis, and I did not even mention the war that has challenged the foundations of our democracies and institutions that were built on that democracy. EAIR has expressed explicitly, in that sense, a support for Ukraine and all who has suffered from this terrible war, and we will continue to do so. Thank you. Now, what is a crisis? Now, I have a new friend. It's a very special friend. He's an expert in everything. He is called ChatGPT. He, is it a she? I have no clue. He says that a crisis is a critical or decisive moment that represents a time of intense difficulty, danger, uncertainty, or instability. I'm not really sure the definition is accurate, but I believe that higher education has an enormous role to play in facing those crises. By education, by research and the fostering of innovation, by engagement with third parties, by long-term vision development, by policy advisory, and by providing future generations the necessary tools to overcome those crises. And we need to do this to create certainty, to take away or help to take away danger, to understand the complexity and to help to establish stability. I'm convinced that higher education contributes to a better society, and that an association as EAIR contributes to a better higher education. I might be dreaming, but this community can move a stone in the river. We, as a community, shape the world of change. So you might have noticed it, for me, this is indeed much more than a conference. I'm very happy to open this conference together with all of you. And while I'm doing this, there are a number of persons I also would like to thank explicitly. And I prefer to do this now because from experience, I expect that there are more people now in the room than there might be on the last day. And I want to make sure you have heard very well who I would like to thank. First and foremost, the famous Linz ladies, Regina, Barbara, Silke, Teresa. I really would like to thank you for all the efforts you have been doing to organize this. I have a special number received at the reception. This number is the key to a very special gift that we brought from Belgium for you, so I would like to hand it over to you after or during the day. Big thanks to Kewan. He has spent many, many hours, days in organizing this forum. As a network, we also have our challenges. We know and we are aware that we can improve, for instance, on our communication. If you have encountered some difficulties with that, we apologize, but we will be working on it. I would like to thank Brill and Springer for supporting us and for sponsoring this forum. I would like to thank our EC members. They are working on their own time because of willingness and eagerness for this community and to help to support this community to work. So I really would like to thank them for all the engagement for this. Last but not least, I would like to thank all of you for your participation and engagement in EAIR. A few weeks ago, you have received a survey in which we asked what we as a community could do for you. And I derive 3 elements when I look at the results. First of all, you are interested in a very large diversity and variety of topics. We have tried together with the track chairs to organize and to provide this diversity, but you will understand that it remains a challenge to establish a program that fits all possible topics. Nevertheless, I hope you will find that inspiration and diversity in the next days. You want hybrid possibilities. That's the second thing I learned from the survey. And we have included this. And we will continue to do so, and we will continue to explore the possibility, even when it comes sometimes with its challenges. You want to meet more throughout the year? Well, I would say let's start with today. I wish you all a very inspiring and nice conference.
Thank you, Bruno. Finally, time has come for our first keynote speech. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce and to welcome Dr. Manja Klemenčič. Please, Manja. Manja researches, teaches, and advises at Harvard University and acts as a consultant in sociology and politics of higher education. This academic year, she's on sabbatical leave from Harvard University and based at the Faculty of Education at University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. She's starting a new research project there, dealing with student agency in European university alliances. Her major research contribution is in the study of student governments and student representation in higher education. And her broader research agenda focuses on student agency and the effects of students on higher education. Manja has over 140 publications, and I have to say that quite some outstanding contributions were either published recently or forthcoming within the next year. For instance, she's editor of the Bloomsbury Handbook of Student Politics and Representation in Higher Education, which is forthcoming in 2024, and co-editor of the Routledge International Handbook on Student-Centered Learning and Teaching in Higher Education, which was published in 2020. A chapter on theory and on student agency is forthcoming in the Handbook on Student Experience in Higher Education, and the chapter on student impact in higher education is forthcoming in the Handbook on Student Voice. And in addition, she serves as co-editor of the European Journal of Higher Education. But Manja is not only an excellent researcher, but also an award-winning teacher. So congratulations on that. 5 times in a row, she was voted one of the most impactful professors at Harvard College. And she also received several prizes. In 2020, the John R. Macron Award for Excellence in Advising and Support to Students. And in 2021, she was the recipient of the Pi Beta Kappa Alpha Lotto Prize for Excellence in Teaching at Harvard College. I'm sure I've forgotten something, Manja, but I won't take too much time away from your keynote, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much first for the gracious introduction, Silke, and vielen Dank zu unseren Gastgebern, wunderbaren Gastgeber, Regina und Silke und die Kollegen hier an der FHOOE Austria, and many thanks to the EAIR board for the invitation, to Bruno and Rosalind and the colleagues in the board. It's my pleasure to be in the EAIR conference, which I think is one of those unique places where we really bridge between the research and the practice, more than in other conferences. I will focus here today in my presentation really solely on students as in the center of what we do in higher education. And I will be specifically discussing the factors that impact student success. In fact, I might be a bit provocative. I will be challenging the established theories that have so far helped us understand the conditions of student success, and challenging the prominent theory of student involvement from 1984 by Austin, with proposing 2 alternative theoretical ways at looking at student experience and student success, namely the theory of student agency and the theory of student impact, that are in the press as we speak, and this is probably my first occasion to bring them live to the audiences. What I will argue is that this theory of student agency, or a student agency as such, offers us a superior explanation or prediction of student success and an understanding of student outcomes. And I will be appealing for more research, policy, and practice to focus on student agency and the student impact on college. If for higher education is to be a key enabler and helping students to shape the world of change. But before I go into the theoretical, which I intend to do, let me begin with a story. So you have heard about my teaching. For 10 years, I have been teaching at Harvard College, Faculty of Arts and Sciences in the Department of Sociology there. I mostly teach undergraduate students, and I exclusively teach courses on higher education. And I give a lot of time to my teaching, like all of those that we teach, but I also give a lot of time, maybe unusually, to my students. I have mandatory office hours, so every student that is ever in my course also meets with me, 15 or 20 minutes in that term. That's unusual because it's easy with my 15 student seminars. It's harder with 100 plus lecture courses, but I still do it because over the years I have realized that one meeting with me in the office hours changes somehow our relationship, our trust, and it changes how that student interacts in my course with me and with other peers. And it's a worthy investment of that. We develop some kind of trust, we develop a personal bond, and that student is somehow empowered to be more confident, if nothing else, in my course. So I get to know my students very well, and Harvard students are very carefully selected. We have an admission rate of less than 4%, so they are academically highly achieving. They are in extracurricular pursuits, accomplished across the board. They are a diverse group of students. 22% of Harvard undergraduates are on full scholarship assistance. They do not pay anything to be at Harvard. Nothing for the tuition, nothing for the accommodation, so completely funded. 55% of students are on partial scholarship assistance. That creates a quite diverse, rather than simply elite population in our students. But what surprised me over the years among my students, that regardless of this high accomplishment, high selectivity, there is still a vast difference in how our students navigate Harvard College, how they feel in control of their student life, their future planning, how they plan their future life. And it's not simply the first generation or lower socioeconomic background. Let me give you just one example from this year. I had two students. I'll give them fake names so that I hide their identity. I had Alexander from a very well-off family, legacy student. There's a number of generations before him that went to Harvard College. That makes him a legacy student. I have later on realized that it's a very well-known dynasty, a family, a billionaire family, very well known. That happens at Harvard occasionally. I normally would not know that, but somebody else recognized and they told me, did you know? And it doesn't matter. And he came, like everybody comes to my office hours, and I ask my usual, so what are your plans? Very confused. One of the students, I don't know, maybe I will study this, not sure yet. How about extracurriculars? He's telling me, well, I tried volleyball, but everyone was very professional. I thought, not understanding that at Harvard, if you go into this varsity, people are quite advanced. So it was very much not sure. One of those drifters, not sure where and what and why am I here. And then I had James, my first generation, military family, mixed family situations, lived most of the life with the grandparents because parents divorced, mental health issues, alcoholism, everything what you can imagine. On full financial aid, of course. But James comes to my office hours saying, Manja, I am interested in education. I'm planning to take all of your higher education courses because even though I don't think I'll stick in education, I'll probably go in consultancy because I would at least like to earn well for a few years. But it looks good if you have a public service dimension, and education is something I'm powerful on. And I want you to get me know really well because you will be able to write me then strong letters of recommendation. And I'm also running for the student government because I want to be very involved in my community. That helps me. So a completely different take. And that is not a single example. You see it, and over the 10 years of teaching, you get to know the students, and you can judge them very quickly, where they stand and how in control they are and how much they are able to navigate and what kind of planning they make. So I became interested in what helps some students to really succeed, to navigate this complex world of Harvard and not. And this is how I came to this notion of student agency. And at Harvard, of course, I don't worry neither about Alexander or James. They will make it. They are high achievers. We have 99% success rate with an army of advisors and with a Harvard brand as their diploma. They will be well. They will be well, both of them. But if we take students elsewhere, less well-resourced, and if we again factor in first generation, lower socioeconomic status, or if we think about international students going into the completely different context, being able to navigate resources that your university offers to you, being able to set your own plan and feel in control of your student life matters to prevent dropout, and matters for the experience, and matters for the success. So I would like to talk a little bit more about that, about theorizing student agency. And in higher education research, we have a lot of associations with student agency, and many of you will be familiar with the Barrett Zimmerman's self-regulation approach, focusing on the forethought, setting goals and strategies, executing, then reflecting on the strategies, revising strategies, and trying again. Another concept, again, very much known, is Knowles and all self-directed learning, taking initiative in terms of diagnosing one's own learning need, developing one's own learning strategies, identifying resources that help you to achieve your learning goals. Another theory, self-efficacy. Bandura and people that have worked after Bandura, in terms of having the belief in one's own capacity to be able to succeed in the context that we have set ourselves, to be able to believe that one's own behaviors will result in the desired results. If I was not here, and usually I can't come to the EAIR because this is our first day of teaching right now at Harvard, so this is the first day and I would be there. In my first day of classes, I always help students understand how they can succeed in my class. First, that they can succeed in my class, and what it takes for the students to be able to succeed. So I'm building their self-efficacy because it's so important for motivation, because it's so important for the well-being and their own belief that they can do well. Another theory associated with student agency, self-authorship. Building self-awareness, believing developing internal capacity to define one's own beliefs, one's own identities, one's own self-awareness, self-determination. Ryan et al. And many who have worked within the self-determination approach, highlighting the basic needs of anybody, but students, especially in higher education, to experience competence, autonomy, and relatedness to others. So this is a kind of more newly, grit is something, if you have students in the lower schooling like I have, in high school, grit is much discussed about the passion and the perseverance as well as important determinants of student success. What I'm trying to list here is a number of distinct yet interrelated competences that we can associate with student agency and that have been shown to have effects on student persistence and student success in higher education. What we don't have yet is this kind of an overarching framework that would be helping us to capture the relationships between these capabilities and the student success and the mechanisms through which that actually happens. I started working with student agency in 2015, at that time still within the framework of the student engagement theories that have come from the Austin's theory of student involvement. And I have defined at that time student agency as student capabilities to navigate and to influence their own learning and education pathways and environments in the context of higher education. So this was, I have already, and as you see with from the definition, I was very much going with the capabilities. But my basic attempt was to correct the very influential Austin's theory of student involvement, which says that the extent to which students can achieve, I'm quoting here, particular developmental goals is a direct function of the time and effort students devote to activities designed to produce these gains. So what happened over the years after Austin's theories is that we have developed the engagement movement and engagement theory, and we have also developed engagement surveys that have measured the extent of students' involvement in educationally purposeful activities, and that those were serving us as an important predictor of student success. And this is a very important work, and a lot of data, a lot of research that has stemmed for this. What was missing, in my view, is really understanding how the students come to engage some activities more effectively. So this kind of a quality of engagement, or what I tried to bring in the student agency, was the missing link. Because Austin defined involvement as both quantity and the quality of the physical and psychological energy students invest into college experience. But Austin's works, especially subsequent research, was not accounting much for that quality of the engagement. What would usually the student engagement survey would ask students, how often do you go to office hours, or how frequently you go to the office hours, and they would be presenting, but it does not often look into what is happening these hours. Is it like my James, who comes to me and knows exactly what he wants from me? He wants me to get to know him, he wants me to mentor him, and to write him later the letters of recommendations, versus Alexander, who is drifting there, doesn't even know why is he there. He has to be, because I mandate all of the office hours, but what he gets out of it is a different story. I'm helping him, but not to the extent that I can help James, who has a very clear idea why he's engaging with me at that time. So I'm trying to bring, so this year I published this theory of student agency with the attempt to provide this overarching framework for structuring our ideas about conditions of student experiences and student outcomes in higher education. And the model is premised on double conversion. First, the agentic orientations that are inherent to students and that are associated with this student self-awareness of who they are, their motivations, their inherent goals, and how those translate into the valuable capabilities such as self-regulation, self-efficacy, self-determination, and then and that we associate with student agency. And then the second conversion, how these capabilities then translate into action and interactions that lead to student outcomes in interaction, of course, with the higher education environments. I draw in this work on the classical social science research theories of agency structure in human action, Giddens, Margaret Thatcher, Bourdieu. People are nodding because those are familiar names, and really also exposing the kind of a double relationship between the action, between the actors and the structures, that not only that structures are imposing on actors the behavioral models, but of course that actors can also change the structures. But I also draw on Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum's capability approach, and looking in particular into the questions of which are the valuable capabilities of students that are influential for their student experiences and student outcomes. So I'm no longer alone in this research, that I want to say. In 2015, there was not much talk about student agency. Gerd Biesta was writing about the teacher agency, and he smuggled in some discussion as well on the students' agency. But at the moment, we have Simon Margitson, who is training a group of PhD students in Oxford who are writing about student agency of graduate students, agency of mobile international students, student agency for self-formation, but also at the chair conference in Vienna, which was happening last week, there was a colleague, Peter Kahn from UK, presenting collective agency, developing students' collective agency for impacting on the public good. So acting and being aware of public issues and being able to act on those issues. Moreover, what we have in common is one thing. We all agree that student agency is not only a condition of student self-formation, so not only help students to achieve student outcomes and self-formation, but it's also possibly an outcome of it. In other words, student agency is a dynamic, inherently dynamic concept that changes as you interact and act in the higher education environment, that you can develop, that you can strengthen, and that can be helped or strengthened with the interventions of the environments in which are from the teachers helping, and we'll talk about at the end how that can happen. Now, policy has also embraced the concept. Most prominently, in 2019, OECD has published the OECD Education Campus 2030, where student agency is a very foundational concept, underpinning all of their actions in education. This is what they say specifically. I'm quoting now OECD Education Compass. Students have the ability and the will to positively influence their own lives and the world around them. And OECD defines agency as the capacity to set goals, reflect, and act responsibly to effect change. So it's a very much coming also in the world of the policy. Another prominent example of the policy accounting for student agency is the European Strategy of Universities developed in 2021, which is the overarching policy framework behind all of the European Union's investment into higher education, the 80 billion financial investment that the European Union gives into the field of higher education and university at large, applied science and universities. They make it very specific that they talk about universities, but they mean all types of higher education institutions. And they say, as one of the priorities within that policy, is that learners should have more opportunity to be engaged as actors of change in their universities and in the community. Again, pointing to the students as agents and student agency. Now, student agency can be directed towards one's own self-formation, making one's own personal plan, understanding the resources that can support your learning needs, developing your learning strategy, assessing your learning strategy, revising it based on it. It's often directed at your own success, right? In college, to get good grades, to graduate, plan your employability. But it can also be enacted towards changes in your higher education environment and society at large. Here I'm speaking more about students as agents of change in their higher education institutions, where you would see I'm bridging back to my own research on student representation, also student activism, which I have done for many, many years, and my own past work with the European Students' Union many, many years ago, where students were enacting agency in order to push for the changes within their higher education institutions. Now, this brings me to the student impact theory. So when students are enacting changes towards the higher education environment, they are also enacting their own agency. Much of the literature in the higher education research is focused on college impact on students. So you have a whole, if we think about sociology of higher education, we have 5 prominent domains of research. Probably the most prolific one or two are, one is the equality in higher education or access into higher education, and the other one is called college impact on students, which means that we are looking in which way structures of higher education
teaching institutions at large are impacting student behavior and student success. What that entire body of literature tends to ignore is that not only structures of higher education have impact on students, but that its students themselves also have impact on higher education, on their peers, on the institutions as such, and at the society at large. This is the entire discussion of student voice movement, which is now becoming prominent as well, and that has not been sufficiently accounted in the research. In my past work, I have mostly focused on student representation, which is the high impact role that students can have formally within their higher education institutions as elected representatives, sitting on the boards, representing students in quality assurance bodies. But we also have a number of jobs that students have that can be impactful. Teaching assistants, research assistants, teaching fellows, students working in international offices, students helping at conferences, all give them agentic responsibilities or the chance to kind of shape the institutions and shape the activities. And they are not to be neglected. In the US, of course, student jobs are prominent, and universities like Harvard and other private universities provide a whole range of employment opportunities to students, partially as a way of financial assistance, partially a way as cutting the cost, right? Because students can be actually helpful in doing work, but also as a way of enabling them to learn new skills on campus, as teaching assistants, research assistants, and things like that. But what is often ignored in that research is that work actually enables students to have effects on their peers and on higher education institutions. So I'm appealing here as well on recognizing those effects as well that students have through their voice, exercising their voice and exercising different roles in the higher education context. I'm closing here because I do want to have a discussion with you on this, kind of moving now from theory to practice, and try to pose the question for the discussion, how to strengthen student agency. I'll kind of highlight 3 areas, and then I'll speak about cautions or maybe things to discuss with, where I haven't completely, which I'm still struggling with, let's put it like that. Let's start with curriculum development and course planning as a natural spaces where we can strengthen student agency by bringing in more flexibility in terms of the choices of assessment, choices of assignments that students can have. For example, in my courses, most of them are research-based. I give them students a chance to choose themselves their research topic. They come to office hours to me, and we explore together if their chosen research topic or research question is viable to conduct research in the span of 1 semester. And then we think about the methodology and the kind of literature that they will use, and then they will conduct research. This is for the research-based courses, and that's the kind of a flexibility that they can have. Any kind of a flexible learning pathways, also highlighted within the European strategy in universities, is a way to strengthen student agency. Bringing students as co-teachers, giving them roles, co-teaching roles, involving them in co-design of a curriculum, all of that can strengthen their agency. Student services is another area. All sorts of student advising, tutoring, where they are helped to make their plans, understand the resources offered at universities, will be helpful for their agency to be in control of their own study processes. Digital infrastructure, good communication, so that they know what is available, are some of the areas where that can be done. And then last but not least, of course, student representation and other forms of engaging students as teaching fellows, research assistants, quality assurance, international offices, and so on. I'm just kind of giving you glimpses, but I would be happy if you will be engaging with me in discussion on this, on the possible venues of strengthening the agencies that could have then those formative or transformative effects on students in terms of helping them to learn how to navigate and to shape their education and learning environments. Now I want to come to the points where we need to discuss, and some warnings or points of caution. When I talk to my husband about student agency, he's a little bit more conservative. He said, you know, you engage students and you have those interactive classes, you're very much into the student-centered learning, learning and teaching. You have written a book about that. It's all about agency. He said, how about, you know, our students are increasingly, you know, showing certain consumerist tendencies. How does that work then, you know? Where do we draw a balance, or how do we draw the line, or how do we balance between giving students more power, effectively, or more responsibility over their own learning, but prevent them to encroaching into the teacher autonomy in terms of demanding what they should be taught, or feeling entitlement in terms of what they should get out of the course, or how much time do you have them. So how do we draw the balance? So this is one thing that I'm hoping you might want to engage with me in the discussion as well, because we have you know, consumerist tendencies in the sense students, even if they're not paying, expecting that certain things will be done, or imposing what should be asked of them and what not. And then we have, of course, teachers, right? Us standing, who have done our work and studies, and who believe we know what they need. So how do we balance that in the context of higher education? How do we balance strengthening student agency with respect for teacher autonomy? And then the other one is, how do we overcome the vices of overprotective parents of the Generation Z? And I'm, you know, standing here humbly before you, because I too am a mother of 2 teenagers now who have just started high school in Slovenia this year, you know, with our own tendencies of helicoptering and organizing their life and making their choices. And I'm not alone. And this is the parenting at the moment, which is not very conducive, right, to agency developing among the children, and how do we kind of balance that part as well? So those would be my, you know, my introductory talks, in hope that you will be engaging in the conversation and we can explore together, especially the mechanisms of strengthening student agency, but also overcoming some of those issues I have highlighted, the balancing between student agency and teacher autonomy, and overcoming the vices of overprotective parenting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manja, for this most inspiring speech. So Manja posed the question, how to strengthen student agency? Is there anybody who wants to add something to that, or to all the other questions Manja just mentioned? Yes, please.
Thank you for the speak. Is this okay? Okay. My name is Thomas Harbo. I'm from the University of Southern Denmark. I was wondering if you have any experiences in study boards, student boards. We have a long tradition in the Northern European universities for inviting students into decision-making, curriculum development, course evaluations, all these things. In Denmark, it is by law that all programs should have a study board with half students and half teachers. And there are student politician unions. So it's quite a strong tradition, over 50 years tradition for that. It seems like that's at least a part of what you're talking about, making student agency. So I wonder if you have any comments or experience in that field?
Where should I start? Thank you for this question. Student representation is an old, well-established tradition in continental Europe especially, but of course with a very variety in terms of formal powers, strong in Denmark, strong in Austria, strong in Nordic countries, especially also in the Central Eastern European, Germany, especially, and recently more due to the work of the European Students' Union in the Bologna process, which was even strengthening the role of the students. But of course on the ground, there are lots of differences of student engagement with student representation, including student engagement in other things that we ask them of, right? Like course evaluations and things like that. In my work, I differentiate about the 4 stages of student engagement in this kind of impact. One is when we ask of them to fill out the survey. So this is just providing information. It's a kind of a lowest, most passive form. Then we have consultation where students are invited to present their views, but they don't have much of a say. They just kind of provide information. Then we have a structured dialogue, which means that the students are sitting in the same bodies, but not necessarily as partners. And then we have the partnership. And this is what I understand is the Danish case, where you actually have equal rights between the members of the student representatives and faculty and other representatives. So there are different cases, and yet we are facing some passivity, right? I think that much of the responsibility here lies with the unions and how much they are able to motivate students and show them their own role and the value. Some of it is, of course, associated as well with a certain consumerist tendencies, even in the countries where there are no tuition fees or low tuition fees, and students doing other things rather than engaging in the kind of a collective pursuits of shaping higher education. But I think that probably the major answer is as well, or this is how students feel that they are agents of change in the university, whether they see that they are heard, not just formally, that they have those formal rights, but they're actually have effects, how much they feel ownership, psychological ownership, belonging to that institution, how much they feel this is my university, I'm part of it, I want to make it better because it's my university, and not just for myself, but also for those that come behind me. So I think it's a lot of a public relations, internal public relationship, how much you actually activate student body to have this affinity and the loyalty to the university, feeling the belonging, feeling the ownership, and feeling that they have actual voice, that it matters, showing them how that survey actually changes. When they do my course evaluation, midterm course evaluations, I always ask them in the middle of terms, is everything fine? Should we change something? And what would you change if you can? I come next time to the class and say, this is what I have done. You know, this is the changes I have done based on what you have told me in the previous, in the survey that I have taken with you. So there are things on us as well that we showed them that they were actually effects, that survey is not going just somewhere to fulfill just a rule, but rather it has effects. That would be kind of a quick answer. But variety also in terms of academic cultures and the authority, very egalitarian between students and professors and administrators in Denmark. Not so much in some other parts of the world, where it might be on the paper, but students in Asia would never, would unlikely undermine the authority of the professor or question the professor. So it's difficult to achieve the same kind of a partnership that we are used to, or that we talk about within the Bologna process. Thank you. There was a lady here.
Hey, first of all, thank you. It was really inspiring to listen to your ideas about agency. And for me personally, it was very interesting because I do a lot of research on well-being. And also agency is a very important component in that. And also I come from a Dutch University of Applied Sciences, and in the Netherlands at the moment, we're talking a lot about flexibility in the curriculum, to make it more flexible, to give students more agency, more choices.
Yeah.
But on the same time, we also see our students struggling with that agency. Mostly when they are first-year students, they have like a big transition coming from secondary school to higher education. We see like they have like all these endless options of what they could do. You know, like all these paths before them, and they are overwhelmed. And they're actually like, just tell me what I have to do. Let me just land first, you know. And so my question to you is like, how do you deal with the differences in the like personal preferences for agency, and also is there a role for us as institutions? So what should be the boundaries within the flexibility that we give to them that makes it less stressful for them and to give them the room to learn, to grow into that agency?
Excellent question. Thank you so much for this. This comes probably more into my work on student-centered learning and teaching and ecosystems. They can be overwhelmed, right? When they have so many opportunities, so many different choices. Just tell me, help me, set me on the pathway, and then I'll do that. Maybe one thing that I strongly advocate for is that if they choose disciplines, and they choose disciplines now in Europe, give them strong foundational courses. Let's not lack on this. I even defend strong entry requirements that help them to see if they're quite the right fit for the kind of schools and that they do not experience important. I know entry requirements can be a little bit dodgy because of the background, things like that. We have additional courses to help them, but I also know about imposter syndrome, and people sometimes place wrongly. More controversial, so we can push back. But I still defend strong foundational courses that will help students to develop the threshold of entry into the discipline, and then optional courses come later on, right? And multidisciplinary. I'm all for the multidisciplinary work. It's very helpful, but I would recommend it a little bit later after the foundations are there, because they have to get the entry into the discipline, how to talk, how to write, how to evaluate knowledge in a discipline, that then they can make more choices. And then with the first years, this is the major transitions, helping them work into this kind of exercises of what matters to them, what is important, what are the topics that call for them, and allowing for the flexibility to change the pathway down the line without losing too much if they have made the wrong choice, right? Of course, in liberal arts and sciences at Harvard, this is different because they have the first full year, explore the variety of courses, and then they put in the concentration only in the second year. And even then, you know, it's lots of possibility to change between the disciplines or use two disciplines or create your own special disciplines. This is even too much choice, if you ask me, because it backfires that sometimes they end for years and they are not so strong in their disciplines. They have been shopping around too much. But I would still defend strong disciplinary foundations that will give them a competence and the sense of efficacy that they have these strong ratios, and then they can go around. And then advising as much as you can, but not just, you know, handing them over, this is all the options, but really kind of workshops with them on their own choices, what they're on, exploring their internal motivation, interests, long-term plans, and then seeing them within that scopes. What are the possible pathways, and reassuring them that pathways can change without much loss of time and money and disappointment if they decide to change down the line. That would be kind of a starting point. But thank you, excellent question.
I think there was a question over there.
I'll try to speak shorter.
So, brief question, brief answer.
Brief answer. Brief answer. Lots of questions, brief answers. Let's agree with that.
The lady in green.
Thank you very much for your very vivid and motivating introduction into your research. Thank you. I'm a sociologist teaching, as you might see from my hair, for 20 years now at the University of Art and Design. And I want to come back to the consumerist attitude for which we are entirely responsible. Because it's not the students who invented the conditions. It was Bologna, for instance.
Oh.
And I think there lies one of the possible keys. If we change the assessment, and for what do I get a credit? Do I get it for just learning what the teacher told me, or do I get a credit for changing things? And the second point, we have made wonderful experiences with students. Our students want to change the world. And they usually start with changing things and want to have the thingy which changes the world. So they are eager to take up responsibility. And our main job is to show them that they can take up responsibility for themselves, as well as for their thing. Maybe it's easier in art and design. Maybe we could just bridge that by concentrating more on on that eagerness students bring. And the third point is, which I would love to discuss, why are we focusing, what are our expectations of students? Why are we not satisfied with the amount of agency they show? Why does it have to be more?
Thank you so much. I will be just briefly pointing this, helping students understand that it's their responsibility for their learning, that they are not children, kids. We discussed with Bruno before that sometimes I tell the students in my class, you're not kids. You cannot refer to each other as kids, and you cannot refer to yourself as children. You're over 18 years old. You're emerging adulthood. You are responsible, because if you think about your kids, then you think that somebody else, your parents or I, am responsible for your learning. I'm not. You are responsible for your learning. So this is also the way that maybe we can counter the consumerist tendencies. Interesting point. Let's go with more questions.
Yeah, we had Adele, you had a question, and then Bruno, I think. I'm really sorry, I know there are numerous questions.
Can I quickly ask something?
Okay,
thank you, and thank you for your talk. It was really interesting. I particularly enjoyed it when you made it quite personal and said that you are a parent of 2 teenagers and the over-involvement, you know. So I could relate to that. But what I actually want to know is, you know, we come from a developmental context. We are in South Africa, and there's a lot of emphasis on access, rightly so. And this has been going on for many years. The focus is still access, but obviously student success comes in with that because, you know, I'm not going to go into the detail, but our context has a funding model that tends to promote access. So my question is, have you ever worked in such a developmental context? And what would you give as advice to institutions who are now taking that step towards student success? Because as an example, I'm from the University of Johannesburg. By the way, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Nandarani Maestri. And that is the point at which our university is. We are definitely changing, but we need to know sort of what are the initial steps that you can take.
Thank you so much for this. I am actually beginning to collaborate with colleagues in South Africa who have worked on the framework on student-centered learning and teaching, and are now also working, coming to me to work together on the student agency and strengthening agency. When it comes to the access and taking diverse student populations into higher education, I think agency becomes even more important, because we need to help them to develop the sense of efficacy, to be aware of the resources that are available to them, that they will be able to succeed, make some plans. And it's not impossible. I'm a first-generation student as well, from a modest background. And one can work with students like this, and sometimes they're even more driven, as you have seen from my example between James and Alexander, that they want to succeed. And even by the fact that they have made it into the higher education already is a major social mobility step for them. But they have to finish, right? They have to complete. So they will be, shortly, there will be work to come on South African example. And if you email me, I will be happy to connect you with a colleague in South Africa at the Free State, with whom we are working on developing a framework, taking student agency as a foundational concept. And in South Africa, as you said, access is a major, major topic, foundational principle of higher education. So taking that into account, of course. Thank you.
We're already running out of time, but I promised Adele to answer, to post the question, and then we will.
Adele Kassar from Malta. Just a quick question. Have you taken into consideration part-time students, so students on a less intense workload? We know that there are even more and more students as we go along, and we need part-time students to keep studying. So have you taken agency and student involvement for part-time students into consideration? Thank you, and very well done.
I have not worked specifically, but you're absolutely right. This is a very specific group of students with ample work and familial responsibilities in addition to studying. Sometimes come more mature with more kind of a clear idea why they're here and what they achieve, but they still need to understand the resources that will help them on that journey. So I think especially in that sense of advising, tutoring, that will help them achieve when they're struggling to balance so many other responsibilities with study. So it would be very, very helpful if somebody would look more into that, somebody who works on part-time students specifically. Thank you for that question.
Okay. Very quick question. Thank you, Manja, for your very interesting presentation. I would like to go one step back. For many years, students have been seen as clients in this new public management ideology, and there was a very straight, easy model. It's a customer. You buy something and you get something. Now we go to an agency model. That's a different thing. And I have two questions, maybe not that easy, but the first question is, how do we make that shift? Is it a market failure? Is it because we are unsuccessful? Is it because we cannot deliver what we promised? Second of all, is it really that big of a change? Or is it something similar packed under another umbrella?
Bruno, provocative question. I would push back in hope that at least in continental Europe we have not fully embraced yet the client model and that the students are still more considered as partners. I'm speaking here especially about the narrative of the European Students' Union, who would definitely profoundly disagree with the conception of students and client and has never embraced it over the past 20 years or 30 years that I work with them. Of course, in the context where I'm coming, the Anglo-Saxon context, this client model with a strong liberal education policies is more present, along with the tuition fees that warrant it. I think I would come back with the lady that was speaking before, kind of showing students their own responsibility for their own learning and kind of an agency for self-formation rather than consumer expectations of delivered service, so that you will do something for me so that I can get my diploma, but rather that I have the responsibility for using the various resources in order to self-form myself, to learn, to develop the competences that will help me to graduate and to gain employment later on. So it's just a question of, it is a very kind of nuanced question of the relationship that student has to the teacher and to the university and the self-conception in that context. And I think that it's a lot of a PR that we have to do, kind of telling the students what to expect that they are in the context and what they can expect from us. And so we need to work on the discourse to find the consumerist turn in higher education. But I'm again hoping that continental Europe from all the places is not quite there, or might be kind of overpassing this. People are saying no, so I'm hopeful that that's the case, and the European Students' Union will fight it down to their bones. I'm sure about it, that that's not going to happen as they're fighting against the tuition fees. I think we'll probably, I'll leave it to Silke to conclude.
Thank you so much for answering these questions. You're still
This is the present you wished for. It's an instant.
Thank you so much. I was hoping.
I'd also want to take the chance to thank our student assistants who took the chance to be part of this conference. So thank you, Karina and Karina. So now it's our turn again. Over to some more of organizer organizational matters. So, Rosalind.
Okay, so Silke has asked me to deal with some housekeeping matters. So she said we have these forum helpers. You wouldn't believe it, but they're both called Karima. Isn't that amazing? Two beautiful young women, both called Karima. Goodness, if I were a man, it wouldn't do to call them beautiful young women, would it? But maybe a woman can do that. What do you think? So anyway, these young women will be able to give you directions to rooms and toilets and so on, and they will provide support during the tracks. And you will also find colleagues at the registration desk during the whole forum. And we want to thank Barbara Aigruber. Is that Barbara, isn't it? Because there's more than one Barbara. So we want to thank Barbara Aigruber, who's done a great job in organizing this event. She is the event manager, and Barbara Aigruber's team will support us during the forum. And I would like to introduce you to the one and only Kuan. Kuan, could you stand up just for a moment and wave your arms, maybe? Very good. Kuan is the coordinator of the EAIR, so whenever you write an email, he's probably the one who is dealing with it.
Or ignoring it.
Or ignoring it. Changes in the programming will be communicated in real time on the Line Upper app, and in addition, we've printed out the whole program in large format, and you will find this on pin boards outside in the common area on notice boards. We will try to keep the programs up to date, and we will indicate all changes in handwriting on the large version of the program. Then drinks, snacks, lunch, etc. will be offered in the common area just outside this auditorium as well. There will be 2 buffet stations, one in the front and one next to the door at the back, next to the door in the back, and one at the back of the main hall. We have tried hard to organize this conference as a green event, so we are trying to keep waste to a minimum, and we will be presenting a newly formulated sustainability policy at the annual general meeting, which will take place first thing tomorrow. So we're attaching more and more importance to sustainability, and that's the reason why you won't find plastic bottles. So we'll start again after a short break with the first parallel sessions. All the track rooms, blessedly, are located in this building. We have 2 rooms downstairs, including this room for the hybrid track, that is track 8, and another room here for track 1, which is my track together with Elke Velp Park. And then upstairs, we have got 4 rooms. We have 4 rooms on the first floor and 2 rooms on the second floor. So those are just brief housekeeping remarks, and I wish you now good, as the French would say, bonne continuation, and a good series of parallel sessions. So look forward to seeing many of you later.
But before we head into the break, I just need to announce a few more things, because we mentioned before we have this hybrid track which will take place in this room, and it might be a little bit of puzzling for you, because in order to follow this hybrid track, you might need to change track rooms. The reason for this is we really tried hard to make this as inclusive, the whole conference as inclusive as possible, and it's really important for us that also people who are not able to come to Linz are able to join the conference. So we have this hybrid track. We have chosen an eclectic number of presentations which will be delivered in this hybrid track. They will be done in an online setting. So we only have online presentations in this hybrid track. So for instance, you can see this here on the slide. We will start after the lunch break with the track introductions in all the rooms, and after these track introductions we will have the first presentations of this day. concerning these hybrid presentations, we will start with presentations from, well, it's the afternoon slide, sorry for that, but in the morning we have the presentations, the hybrid presentations from track 2 in this room. So there won't be any presentations in the track 2 room, which is the sustainability track is room number, I don't know it by heart actually right now, 2 or 3. So no presentations in 2 or 3 right now. They will be downstairs here in this room. And after the lunch break, the sustainability track will move back onto the second floor, and we have other presentations than in this room. So that's how it works. As I said, presentations will be online. We will have participants joining online, and you hopefully as well. So that's how it works. If it was too complicated, too confusing, we have our students' assistants, we have the registration desk. Please just go ahead and ask those questions. Yeah, then we have a lunch break. We are running a bit late, so I would suggest to start to have a 10-minute break and making the track introduction a little bit shorter. So I think my colleagues will be fine with that as well, for my track colleagues. So then let's meet in the track rooms at 10 past 11, please.